And would you hold me through the days and through the nights? And when my heart's failing, and when I am wasted, and when it feels like all I have's gone to pieces, oh, would you take me away into your light? You know I gotta get up on my rising and my falling is at your feet. Without you, there's no me. And no, I am with us. Together, alone is withering. It's all dead and gone. Pull me in wherever it is you take me away into your light, into your light. And would you hold me through the days and through the nights? Oh, yeah, through the nights when my heart's failing, when I am wasted, when it all goes, when it feels like all I have is gone to pieces. Oh, you take me away into your light. With you, I do not feel discomfort. I do not feel bad luck. Yeah, you've got all of my devotion. From your sweetest touch, I wouldn't run. Yeah, yeah, I do follow all the show, along with Saki. Olubala, Olulana can't find me. I do follow all the show, along with Saki. Olubala, Olulana can't find me, can't find me. Oh, I'm ready to follow you anywhere to be a lot Cory. Yeah, you've got me, oh, you've got me, rock steady. You got my heart, Jesus, Father, friend. Your love's till the end. Oh, I'm ready to follow you anywhere to be a lot Cory. Oh, you got me, yeah, you got me, rock steady. You've got my heart, Jesus, Father, friend. Your love's till the end. Oh, your love's in the sense that when I see the end, I do not see regrets. So it's for certain, you move me like the mountains, high and high. When the low comes, you're beside me. Yeah, yeah, I do follow, will show, along with Saki. Ulubala, Ululana can't find me. Hey, yeah, I do follow, will show, along with Saki. Ulubala, Ululana can't find me. Oh, I'm ready to follow you anywhere to be a lot Cory. Oh, you got me, yeah, you got me, rock steady. You got my heart, Jesus, Father, friend. Your love's till the end. Oh, I'm ready to follow you anywhere to be a lot Cory. Yeah, cause you've got me, rock steady. You got my heart, Jesus, Father, friend. Your love's till the end. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? My voice audible for everyone? Can you hear me, Mary? Are you just...
I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for joining this session. Thank you for joining the mental health training on post-traumatic stress disorder. You're welcome. We thank you for joining. So just before we get into it, we're going to be taking the opening prayer, and it's going to be done by Oluwakemi. So Kemi, please can you give us a short prayer? Oh, you're muted.
Okay, I think I'm on. Okay. In Jesus' name, as we're about to start, Lord, we commit this program onto your hands, oh Lord. We pray, even as the speaker will be coming to talk to us, oh Lord, she shall speak to our spirit, soul, and we shall learn one or two things and put it into practice in Jesus' name. We commit this event onto your hands, oh Lord. We pray you shall take control from the beginning to the end, and it shall not just be. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
All right, so we shall take charge of this event from the beginning to the end. In Jesus' name we are prayed. I'm done praying. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Kemi. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. So now we will have the coordinator of ASAD to give us a short introduction on ASAD now. So Dari, please can you go on?
Hello everyone, how you all doing? My name is Dari Asobele. I'm the founder, coordinator of Anti-Suicide and Depression Squad. It's a privilege to have you all join us. Thank you so much for joining us. So just a brief understanding as to what Anti-Suicide and Depression Squad is all about. So basically, we're a mental health organization. We're a subgroup under Executives Helping Initiative. And so just as the name says, ASAD, it means Anti-Suicide and Depression Squad. Our focus is just to see how we can help people that are struggling with their mental health. Most importantly, people struggling with depression or having suicidal ideation. So for ASADS, the way the organization is structured is such that we have an ASADS forum that has over 1,000 participants where we engage in conversations every Monday and Friday and every day, just to make sure people are fully informed and people are aware of various mental health issues that they might have or they might be struggling with. Now, aside from that, we also have a group called the ASAD listeners, who are literally people that are being trained as mental health first aiders. So I'm sure many of us don't know this. Every 40 seconds, someone takes their life. In Nigeria, we are about 250 million. We don't have up to 1,000 professional therapists. And so even if we had 1,000 people, it means one person has to listen to about 250,000 people, which is a lot, which is crazy. And so what we want to do is see how we can train people to be mental health first aiders to be able to assist people so that people can get free access to mental health care as well. So that's the whole initiative behind the ASAD listeners. We also have access to professionals, local and foreign professionals. Those services are paid for if you feel comfortable using any one of them. And then aside from that, we also have our free mental health training, which is something that we are very committed to doing. Every first Saturday of the month, we have a free Zoom mental health training so that people can get access to free information, free knowledge every month. And this is also being broadcasted on YouTube Live so that even if you can't make this session, you can always go back to listen to it. And then we also have our free support group sessions that happen every last Saturday of the month, right? So the way we structure the organization is done in such a way that use whatever is comfortable for you. So some people prefer to be on the ASADS forum. Some people would rather join the free mental health training. Some people would rather join the free end of the month support group as well. Also, we have opportunities for people to volunteer. We seriously take our volunteering scheme seriously. We just finished recruitment right now. We had a lot of applicants. Not everyone was able to make it due to our strict policies. We need people that are committed, people that understand the struggle of the battle that we're trying to fight, basically. Also, during the course of the session, feedback form will be shared. If you'd like to join us, please fill the feedback form. but we'll also want you to be able to commit your time and resources to support us as well. So thank you so much. Please enjoy the session, and please take notes, ask questions, and be free. So thank you so much for having me. Have a wonderful day.
All right, thank you so much, Dari. Thank you so much for the introduction. So yeah, as I said earlier, welcome to the mental health training organized by ASAD. We've heard what ASAD is all about and what it does. So if you're interested, you can also visit our social media pages. The link will be dropped in the chat box. So today the topic is post-traumatic stress disorder. Yeah, so the person who we are fortunate enough, we are honored to have her with us is Dr. Oluwapelumi Lawal. She'll be here speaking on post-traumatic stress disorder, the symptoms and the coping strategies. So yeah, I'll just go ahead to give a brief introduction about who Dr. Pelumi is. All right, is she here with us, please? Is Dr. Pelumi here with us? Okay, so Dr. Pelumi is here to join us. Okay, but either way, let's get our writing materials ready. It's going to be a very interactive session. So let's get our materials ready in preparation of when Dr. Pelumi joins us. Just give us like a short time. Less than. Okay, in less than 5 minutes she'll be here. But meanwhile, while we're waiting for her, I just want to like get your opinions. What you think post-traumatic stress disorder is. Like, do you have any idea? Ayola, can you share any opinions you have about PTSD? Hi, Ayola, please can you share some of the opinions you have about PTSD?
All right, thank you. I couldn't unmute myself at first. So PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, to me is like a repercussion of experiences you had in the past, things that has been traumatic to you in the past, and is beginning to come back to show face in your current time or your current situations. For example, people that have had rape issues, people that have family issues, financial issues, and all of those things. So it's beginning to show face in your current situations, and it's beginning to disturb or stress you out in one way or the other. So that's my take on PTSD.
Oh, all right. Thank you so much, Ayola. Do you have anybody who wants to share with us what they have, or rather what they want to say about PTSD? You can raise your hand, so we'll just unmute you. Do you have anyone else who wants to share? Maybe like an experience. Adebola, do you want to share with us? Just any idea? Don't worry, you can share with us. Adebola, we're waiting for you. Is you are waiting for? Tell us anything you know about PTSD.
Hello. Hello, my name is Adebola from Lagos, Nigeria. Post-traumatic disorder to me, like Ayo said, is actually a repercussion of the past reoccurring in your present. And if care is not taken, it actually has a detrimental effect to your present that might not help you grow or see visions to where you're actually leading to. So to me, I think post-traumatic disorder, it's a wide range. So while I await the doctor talk about it more for us to know, I guess it's definitely going to be a very interesting topic to listen to. Thank you, Doreen.
All right. Thank you so much, Adebola. Thank you very, very much. Personally, I think, yes, I think that, yeah, you guys are right. You guys have said it, but just think, people can just have experiences and they don't know that they have this burden in their hearts. Maybe when they are put into similar situations, similar situations, and those, what would I call it? Those traits start showing up. So I think when the doctor comes up, it's just good to ask, how does one know that they have PTSD? Because I think a lot of people are oblivious to that fact. So yeah, oblivious to that fact. But if anybody who wants to share anything else about like how somebody can know how they have PTSD, do we have anybody who wants to share with us? I will call out names. So if you want to share with us, you can share with us. I will call out names. Okay, Kemi, thank you very much. Kemi, thank you very much.
Okay, so the common symptoms of PTSD to me are nightmares, physical sensation as pain, sweating, or trembling. Another one is intrusive thoughts or image or vivid flashback, feeling like the trauma is happening right there and now, having a flashback of what is happening. And how do you know people have PTSD? That's the way you know if people have PTSD. And can it be cured? From what I've learned so far, I heard that it does not last forever, and even without treatment. So it will go away after a few months and all of that. I think that's what I want to share.
All right, thank you so much, Kemi. Thank you so much. Actually, this is my first time of hearing that there are like physical traits for effects of PTSD. Usually, I just thought it was just like an experience. Take, for example, if a lady was robbed and maybe harassed at the same time, then she becomes very defensive when she comes in the midst of maybe men or something like that. Can that be classified as like an effect of PTSD? Or it's just like a defensive mechanism? What do you guys think? I think, but like you're muted, I can't hear you. Ayola, you're muted, I can't hear you as well. If you're saying something, I can't hear you. Yes, Ayola. Okay, Damilola, sorry, you wanted to say something. Please go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, so for me, I think another way to like identify people with PTSD is that they are easily very frightened. Maybe for someone who has been robbed, you see them acting, sometimes I want to say the overreality at night, any little sound, they are already like on their feet, they are already like, easily aggravated. And then some of them used to like, I think they just overreact generally to things. Maybe if that familiar situation comes around, okay, for like me now, I'm scared of dogs. Like, I think I've been bitten by a dog. So I think I have PTSD from there. So even if it's in the afternoon and I see a dog, the way I will be shaking, even if that dog is 1 mile away from me, the way I will be shaking, some people will be like, damn it, calm down now. But I'm like, I beg, go, please. I know why I'm shaking like this. And even sometimes, even if I don't want to like shake or maybe get angry that someone brings a dog close to me, I just like do it. And I think that's like PTSD sign. I overreact to things that has like traumatized me in the past before. So I think that overreacting and easily getting angry and that shaky thing is like some of the symptoms, that, okay, this person has PTSD.
Now that's a valid, I think that's a valid feeling. If you're scared of dogs, yes, that's very, very valid. I don't think anybody should be laughing at that, Ayola. It's a very valid Valid statement. Oh, please, can we help unmute Ayola? He wants to share something. Can we please help unmute Ayola? He wants to share something.
Yeah, all right, thank you. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you're very audible.
Yeah, so I think we have been sharing signs of PTSD and all. So I also want to share an experience real quick.
Okay.
I remember back then when I was in SS1, I transitioned from a private school into a public school. So I used to be a very, very big boy, like chubby, fat, and also tall. So I got into a public school. My first year of resumption, I got in like a week to exam, because if you go through the processes of public schools and federal schools, it takes times before you resume at times. So I got into the class, they were having a math class at the moment, and the first view, I saw over 100 students in class, and I'm like, what is going on here? So the fact that I was fat, I was coming in very late, I was looking all like butty, they all started laughing, and everybody was like, who is this kid? Who is this kid? And I started crying in front of the class there. So afterwards, I realized that I used to be a kind of person that, right from my private school, I used to engage in debate, engage in quiz, and some stuff like that. But then I realized that when I got into the school, when it comes to competitions like that, I do not want to partake. And sometimes when I do partake, I'm always scared. Anxiety, anxiousness just gets the best part of me. Sometimes I lose, like, I look at my body shape. It feels like I have body image issues and all of that. So this is like as a result of the mockery scene, or maybe like the scene that I experienced upon resumption. And over time, I realized that it became a part of me. But then I am beginning to break off or break loose of that thing. Now I'm no longer as fat as I used to be before, and I am not as anxious as I used to be before. Though it comes once in a while, but I am taking charge, and I think yes, I'm getting better at that.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing, Ayola. But how did you start breaking off from that? Because you stated now that when you have activities that you were interested in, that was like an hindering factor for you. Like you could not go ahead to fully express yourself because you were carrying the burden of how people thought of you physically. So can you just share how you transitioned from overcoming that kind of I can refer to it as a blockage, that kind of blockage, and how you actually stepped in to start doing what you needed to do?
Yeah, all right. First thing I realized I did was I had a different mindset to it. So the thing is, from your mindset is the way you think and all of that is what comes out to you and all of that. So I had a different mindset, and I realized that, okay, this thing is just like a facade. It's not actual who I am, and it's what I am believing, or what I am making myself believe is making me do like that, or making these things come to me. So the first step I needed to do was believe in myself and know that, okay, this thing is not true, or I can always be better. So when I had the right mindset, I started breaking off gradually. And activities I did was I tried to mingle more with friends. I forced myself to engage in some of these things. I start from little activities of speaking with people, ensuring I have intentionally want to talk to people, intentionally want to host things, want to go for competitions and all of that. So gradually I realized that, okay, I was building myself. I was cutting off fear and anxiety. Another thing I did was I intentionally learned. I've taken some classes on communications, how to speak better, how to read better, and all of those things. So it made me feel much more better. And I studied more of my body shape and all of that. Then I realized that, okay, that's when I got to this one, did more of science. I realized that this is a gene thing. My parents are big, family is big. So literally, it's not my fault that I am big. So it's not like I am not LD or it's a bad fat and all of that. So gradually I realized that, okay, all of these things are going off. When I feel anxiety or when I feel anxious, I do the breathing exercises, like taking in a deep breath, holding and breathing out, affirming myself, saying positive things to myself and all of that made me feel much more confident in myself and much more better. Yeah. So the whole thing started from my mindset, from the thought processes I had.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Ayola, for sharing. Thank you. You talked about being intentional about like the change, and I really personally I appreciate that. So we have our speaker here, Dr. Oluwa Pelumi Lawal is here, just as her appellation has connotes. She's a medical doctor and also an entrepreneur. She's also a resident doctor in psychiatry. So I trust that we're in the best of hands today when we're learning about PTSD and its coping strategies. So I'm just going to welcome Dr. Oluwapelumi Lawal to the talk, to the session, so she can start. Welcome, Dr. Oluwapelumi.
Please hold on.
Okay. Okay. Dr. Pelumi, are you still here with us? Okay, so we have somebody who would like to share their experience, but it's via the chat box. Yes, you can type it in the chat box and I will read it out for everyone, actually. You can go ahead. Yes, you can go ahead. Oh, you're muted. You're muted. You're muted. Okay, can we have the, can you please unmute Dr. Pelumi, please? Okay, great. Welcome, Dr. Pelumi. Welcome. So great to have you here.
Pleased to be here. Okay, so hi everybody. Okay, so like you've introduced, I'm Dr. Lawal, Oluwapelumi Lawal, and I'm a registrar. I'm currently training at the Federal Neuropsychiatric Hospital at Yaba, Lagos. And my mentee actually invited me for this. She was like, okay, you guys would love to have me. And that's why I'm here today. And of course, I'm a mental health advocate too. So whatever has to do with mental health or how people can feel better in their minds and all that, I'm always up for it. So, and that's one of the reasons why I actually accepted to be here today. And it's good to be here. So I think I'll just start sharing my screen. We're going to be talking about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Like even from the name, you can tell that, okay, it's a stress disorder that happens after a particular stressor has been experienced by some people. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. Just give me a minute. Okay, can I go ahead?
Yes, please, you can go ahead. Yes, please.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about post-traumatic stress disorder using the following outline. We can't talk about post-traumatic stress disorder without talking about what stress is, what are the types of stress, what are the coping mechanisms that we might use to even cope with normal stress that we encounter from day to day, you know. Then what actually is post-traumatic stress disorder? What are the things that predispose to it? What are the causes? and what can we do about it. And I hope that everybody, has or is able to pick one or two things from this discussion. So in biological terms, stress literally is a force from the outside world that is acting on an individual. So usually there are things around us or our environment, our relationship or interaction with people in the environment that actually act on the individual, that is us. The word stress was first used in 1930s by an endocrinologist who is called Ansel, to describe the responses of laboratory animals to various stimuli. So it is meant to be the response of an organism to a perceived threat or stressor, but now it is now used like from day to day to mean the stimulus itself, not even just the response. Do you understand? So what are the stages of stress? So we have the alarm stage, we have the resistance stage, and we have the exhaustion stage. The alarm stage is a state of fight or flight. And somebody might want to ask questions about how do we actually go through this process of stress? So our brain is wired in such a way that whatever we are going through or we're doing, there are different parts of the brain that actually govern or are in charge of these. So it does not leave stress out. So the alarm stage is a stage where you have the fight or flight, such that you have some physical symptoms or physical responses that shows you that, okay, you're going to encounter a particular stress, or you are encountering it also, and then you need to start preparing for how to tackle it and all that. So as time goes on, we'll talk about how people respond to stress. So the second stage of stress is irritability. That's the resistance stage, and it consists of irritability. Of course, when you're experiencing something that is not the usual thing that you're used to experiencing, you would have some sort of reaction towards it, and that might come in the way of irritability, frustration, inability to concentrate, or even poor attention levels. Then you have the third stage, which is the exhaustion stage, when the stress continues. You have symptoms of fatigue, burnout, depending on what kind of stress you're experiencing. It might be psychological, it could be physical, and it could even be something happening in your body that, would come out as a stressor for you. Then you can have psychological symptoms like anxiety, depression, decreased stress tolerance. The amount of stress that a person A is able to tolerate might be so much different from what a person B can tolerate, even though you might be exposed to the same environmental factors or psychological factors, so to speak. So we have another classification, a classification of stress. The first one is the good stress. The second one is the tolerable stress, while the third one is the toxic stress. So for the good stress, it's manageable stress or experience of rising to daily activities such as leaving your house to go to your work, or going from your hostel to school, trying to assimilate what you're being taught so that you are not left behind and all that. So those are like day-to-day stressors that we experience. Those are the good stress because they help us to actually rise up to the challenge. And when we are able to focus on the challenge and actually overcome it, it is something that gives us motivation to want to continue in life. So these include having good self-esteem, good impulse control, decision-making capability, and ability. So the second one is the tolerable stress. And in situations where maybe bad things happen, but the individual with a healthy brain is still able to cope with it because of the way your brain has been made to help you. God has done it in such a way that when you undergo stress or you undergo stressful conditions, your brain is able to rise up to the challenge and provide ways for you to go about it. So the third one is the toxic stress. In this type of stress, the situation is now going far beyond what you can control or what you're able to rise up to, and conquer. And this may also have maybe something to do with the brain, the way your brain is designed, or the architecture of your brain, or maybe some organic issues that you might be having in a particular part of your brain that may not make you to be able to conquer the stress. Because I don't know the audience that I'm speaking with. I don't know if you're all medical students, or I know that some of you might be people that don't understand medical terms, but talking medically now, there's a part of the brain, the hypothalamus and pituitary, and even some part of your adrenal gland in our body that actually helps us, produces a stress hormone that is called cortisol, and this helps us to be able to cope with stress. So there might be impaired development of good impulse control as a result of this, and it might also affect one's judgment or insight into the issue of the stress. So there's been a ranking of stressors. There are different stressors in life, but there's been ranking in terms of over 100, how much stressful are these events in life. So for death of a spouse, it ranks 100%. So if somebody were to lose a spouse, there's 100% chance that the person would, go through stress, emotional, psychological, or even physical stress. So divorce is 73, marital separation is 65, being in prison is 63, death of a close family member is 63, personal injury or illness conditions ranks about 53, marriage, the stress of marriage itself ranks 50, being dismissed from work ranks 47, being pregnant is a serious stressor, and that ranks 40, your child leaving home ranks 29, beginning or ending school, being in school itself is a stressor, but it's not as much as when you get divorced or a family member dies and all that. So it's still a stress that you can cope with. Changing residence, to some of us who move from one place to the other and we're like, oh, I'm going through stress, because it is a stressful activity. Then vacation, Christmas, as you can see, rank that. They don't rank as much as the major ones. So, like I said earlier, there are different ways to respond to stress. The first one is the somatic fight or flight response. Sometimes when we are stressed, we tend to, our body tends to go through some level of changes. Some, when they are stressed, they will breathing hard, trying to control themselves. Some, you see that the hairs on their body, they start having goosebumps. And another way is the emotional response, in terms of how we are able to emotionally respond to a particular stress or a stressful environment or a stressor. Some people emotionally, they react to stress, different types of stress, by being anxious or being sad or being elated. It depends on the kind of stress, Like, for example, getting married or preparing to get married is a stressful event. And some people, you see them, extremely ecstatic, happy. Some people, they're just sad that I just want this thing to be over and all that. So everybody has different ways of coping with stress. Then the psychological response too has to do with how you're able to cope with a particular stressor, like a coping strategy that you develop. And another thing is a defense mechanism. Different people have different coping strategies and defense mechanisms when they encounter stressors. So coping strategies now are useful for reducing the problem or lessening the emotional reaction to it. So we have the adaptive and maladaptive. The adaptive is like a positive way of actually dealing with stress. The maladaptive way is the one which might cause us negative outcomes. Do you understand? To a particular stressor. So the adaptive ones are trying to find ways to solve the problem on ground, strategies that will help you to reduce the emotional stress that you might be going through, maybe the anxiety, relaxation techniques that will help you to reduce anxiety. If you are depressed, find things that you enjoy doing to help you to cope with the stress. Do you understand? Those are like problem solving strategies and emotional reducing strategies. So how you can go about the coping strategy for problem solving strategies is maybe let's say you have a task in school now, you've been given a project to go about, and maybe you're like 3 or 4 in a group and you guys don't know how to go about it. A normal coping mechanism or a coping strategy will be to maybe look for seniors who have experience in that field, people that have done it before. You get information, you get advice, to be able to confront and solve the problem. That is an adaptive way of going about problem solving. Then emotion reducing strategy, like I said, maybe looking for ways to relax from the stress. You can vent your emotions, that will make you feel better. Evaluate the problem, like try to actually analyze, okay, what is this thing about? What's this issue about? That is a coping mechanism that is adaptive. You are adapting towards the stress such that the stress eventually reduces or goes away completely. Then the maladaptive coping styles that I talked about is there are ways to actually reduce emotional response to stressful circumstances in the short term, but they usually lead to greater difficulty in the long term. So take, for instance, somebody whose family member or a close relative just died, and the person is not actually trying to analyze what happened. Okay, why did this person die? Did they have an accident? If they had an accident, what exactly happened? Where were they going? Like, try to analyze why these things might actually have happened. That's a normal coping mechanism. That's an adaptive coping style. But when you're now maybe using alcohol or unprescribed drugs, like psychoactive substances like cannabis, like cigarettes, and then you're not taking it in excess, that's, in the short term, that will give you a relief from the stress. But guess what? Later on in the future, it might even have more debilitating harm on you. Then deliberate self-harm, like trying to introject, we will still see some of these defense mechanisms, trying to hurt yourself because you feel pain, such that, okay, in the long run, whenever you now feel pain, it doesn't feel like it's pain again because you can do it to yourself. I don't know if you understand that. Then unrestrained display of emotions, like being aggressive towards people, verbally assaulting people, or even physical aggression, can be a maladaptive coping style. For the defense mechanisms now, we actually need to look into them, because different people, if 10 of us were exposed to the same stress, everybody will have different defense mechanisms to that particular stressor. It's the same stressor, but we'll have different ways of actually always dealing with a particular stressor for a long time, So we have the unconscious responses to external stressor. We have projection, we have introjection. Projection is like when you're trying to, a stressor has occurred and then you're trying to put it on other people so that you will feel relieved of the stress. Introjection is when you now act on a particular stressor by actually harming yourself more, like introjecting, putting it back inside to yourself. And then, for example, maybe identifying with an aggressor. For example, maybe your consultant has told you that you should read a topic and then you still don't understand. And then they ask you a question about it and you are sort of fumbling. And then the man punishes you or something, and you're accepting that, oh yes, I deserve this punishment because I did not do this or I did not understand this. So you're introjecting. So denial is the third one, when, for example, if they tell you that, okay, maybe your grandma died or a close relative died, and you're like, never, it's not possible for this person to have died. and that's your own way of dealing with the stress. Some people go about it by reaction formation, by maybe getting angry, like being outward in their projection, so to speak. The next one is regression. Regression is, let's say you're already at a particular point in life and then a stressor occurs, and then you go back to the level before. I don't know, like when I mean regression, let's say a child is already walking now and then goes through a particular stress, maybe like a seizure or something like that, and then goes back to not being able to walk. And what you can now do is just sit without support. Do you understand? That's what I'm trying to explain for regression. Then repression is something has happened, the stressor has occurred, and then you are trying to suppress it with emotions instead of you actually relieving the moment or the stressor so that you can feel better. Your own way of feeling better is by trying to suppress, what happened. Then displacement is by just pushing it aside as if it never occurred. Rationalization, for example, let's say you witnessed maybe an accident, and then maybe a lot of people have died from the accident. And guess what? What you are thinking is how the car must have maneuvered. No. Like you're thinking that, okay, maybe the road was not good here, and that's why the accident happened. You're not actually looking at what has happened and trying to relive that moment. Then sublimation, like the moment the stress happens, is not even now on your mind again. You can't even remember that it ever happened. Then humor seems to be like the major way that Nigerians are able to cope with stress these days, because on all over social media, if something happens, maybe Chibok girls were taken away, people start making memes about, how they start making memes about whatever it is that is happening in the society, and everybody just laughs it off, and then they feel better from the stress. So let's classify reaction to stress. The first one is the acute stress reaction. This is when something happens, and then maybe a stressor or a stressful condition happens, and then within 24 hours, the person is able to get over it, and then whatever physical or psychological reaction to that stress, they are able to deal with it at that time within 24 hours, and they feel better, Then acute stress disorder is which it might actually persist for a while, and then within 48 hours and 2 weeks, everything is back to normal. But the post-traumatic stress disorder is a long-term reaction to a stressful event. So that's the main reason why we are here today. We want to learn about post-traumatic stress disorder. So my outline is for us to talk about the introduction, talk about how many people are susceptible to post-traumatic stress disorder, what can cause it, what are the clinical features that you might see that will make you know that, okay, this person might be going through a post-traumatic life event, and the treatments and others. So bear in mind that post-traumatic stress disorder is a long-term thing. It's usually like an intense, prolonged, and sometimes delayed reaction to a stressful event. Not everyone who is exposed to the same extreme stressor develops PTSD, although your personal predisposition plays a very major part in somebody developing PTSD. And then during PTSD, the trauma or the stressor must have been very weighty for somebody to actually come down with post-traumatic stress disorder. We'll talk about situations or life events that can actually make somebody have, an intense, prolonged, and sometimes delayed reaction to a stressful event, and why this can happen. So the risk of developing PTSD after a traumatic event is usually between 8 to 13% for men and 20 to 30% for women. What this means is that women are at risk of developing PTSD more than men, although the difference is not so much, but it is still significant. And the lifetime prevalence or probability of actually having PTSD is 8%. For women, it is 10%, and for men, it is 4%. Some types of stressors are associated with higher rates of PTSD. You can't compare, like I showed you the rating now, you can't compare the loss of a loved one to the kind of stress that you experience when you're preparing for Christmas or for a holiday or when you are pregnant. Do you understand? So somebody might develop PTSD to witnessing a fatal accident, but might not develop PTSD to preparing for an event. So it is most prevalent in younger adults. So younger adults are more likely to develop PTSD than older adults. So it is common in people who are single, who don't have partners, or have partners but are not yet married. It is also common in divorced people. Being widowed is actually a risk factor for developing PTSD. Socially withdrawn people tend to, or are at more risk if they encounter a stressor. They're at more risk of developing PTSD than people who are socially accepted and they are people who are sociable, so to speak. Low economic status, people that have low economic status are more at risk. War is a very big predictor of PTSD. People who work in the army, you see some of them actually having post-traumatic stress disorder to events that have happened, explosions, or killing people dying like animals and all that. They tend to have more predisposition to PTSD. The death of a loved one is a very important stressor that can predispose one to PTSD, especially if it is in a traumatic way. Exposure to fire, like being in a building that was burning or being burnt or having inhalational injury due to burns is something that can cause PTSD. Natural disaster, molestation, being raped, or other forms of sexual abuse can actually serve as stressors that can make one develop PTSD. You can't compare all these things that I've mentioned now. You can't really compare them to little amounts of stressors. Those ones probably cause an acute stress event or reaction or disorder, but that means that the person will be able to deal with it quicker than all these ones that I talked about. There are some conditions that actually sometimes co-occur with PTSD, such as anxiety and depression and some other, issues that we'll probably still look at. So what are the characteristics of post-traumatic stress disorder? Here, the stressor is usually intense, prolonged, and then there's an abnormal response to these exceptionally stressful events that I have mentioned, and these ones that I've mentioned actually. So how do we characterize PTSD? Number one is re-experiencing of aspects of the stressful events. When you re-experience some of these things, like for example, somebody that was in a war, maybe Second World War, and the person keeps re-experiencing bouts, like having bouts of these traumatic experiences that happened. Then also, another thing is that the person might be hyper-aroused. Any small movement around them, they start getting scared or anxious or start remembering what must have happened in the past. Then avoidance of reminders is also a characteristic of PTSD. People that have gone through events that are life-changing or life-threatening, such as that I've mentioned, they tend to want to avoid reminders, I know you might be seeing the first one and the third one as like opposite, but they can occur in PTSD. So avoidance of reminders is when the person tries to maybe like I'm going to keep using the war, or maybe a natural disaster, let's say natural disaster. And then maybe they see ruins of a place that has been destroyed. And then that makes them remember what is happening. But later on, they try to avoid remembering those things or even move away from where that kind of event happened. So what are some of the symptoms that we can see in PTSD? You can see psychological reactions that come up in relation to adapting to new circumstances. And these circumstances can include maybe divorce, separation, birth of a child that has special needs. This is a very important factor because it's something that you are not used to before, something that is traumatic for you, you know. Migration from one place to the other, you're not really able to adapt to the new environment because you're still stuck up on the old one. And to an extent, maybe you've not been able to analyze the fact that, you know, you're moving to a new place, and that might be a stressful condition. Some of these symptoms can include anxiety, excessive worrying, poor concentration, low mood, being sad, having low energy, generalized weakness, even thoughts of maybe hurting or harming yourself, you know, thoughts of you feeling of you are not helpless, you are helpless, or you feel like you are not actually around, you are actually not in this world, you know, or feeling that maybe there are parts of your body that is not part of you. These are symptoms that you can see in PTSD. Then irritability, being irritable all the time, palpitations, hearing your heartbeat all the time, any small movements, your heart is beating fast and you're wondering why. These are then tremors too. Some other things or symptoms that you can experience can include feelings of shame and guilt. That usually happens a lot in depression, when people feel that maybe they are the cause of something, an adverse reaction that might have occurred. Anhedonia is loss of interest in things that you used to love to do. That can happen. Inability to even experience positive emotions because you are stuck up on the old one, and it's really difficult for you to even laugh or be happy in newer situations where that is expected of you. Then some people might be having pessimistic view of life and be like, oh, nothing good can happen to them in this life again because of what has happened in the past. So there are different ways that we can explain why post-traumatic stress disorder actually happens. We have the psychodynamic theories. We're going to explain it. Cognitive theories, fear conditioning, and some maintaining environmental or social or psychological factors. So the first one, talking about the psychodynamic theories, this theory says that the response of an individual to an emotionally challenging information is dependent on the emotional development of the individual. Let's say before the stressor occurs, that person usually, maybe while growing up, has not actually had the ability to develop well psychologically. You know, there are different domains of development. So if the person has not been able to develop psychologically, it might have an issue with them being able to cope with stressors that may occur later on in life. Then the cognitive theory, here, affected persons are not able to process or rationalize the trauma that actually caused this disorder. So the normal processing of emotionally charged information is overwhelming for them, such that they have poorly processed the information or the memory of the stressor that has occurred. Then there's the fear conditioning. This has to do with like when we say conditioning in medicine, we mean that for example, we can talk about classical conditioning, in which something you're associating something, maybe pain or fear or anxiety, you're associating it with the events that happen. Like, for example, let's say that you witnessed a fatal motor accident and you saw all that happened and it caused you pain, caused you fear, of course, especially if you were in maybe the accident, and then the next time you are thinking of something like that, you're having fear, because the first time you had fear, you were scared when that kind of event happened. So that's what we call fear conditioning. Then maintaining factors such as factors that will actually make this issue continue, even though you have been able to take care of this fear conditioning and the psychodynamic and cognitive issues. You might have maintaining factors that just keep making this thing to be there, like negative appraisal of the early symptoms that you were having, fear, anxiety, and other symptoms that you might have had during when the stressor happened. So you're trying to avoid reminders of the traumatic events, suppressing intrusive memory and all that. So what are the risk factors for PTSD? Because not everybody that is exposed to the same amount of stress will actually develop PTSD. So individual factors like personal history of maybe mood and anxiety disorder. In some families, they have family history of some mental illnesses, of which mood and anxiety disorder can be part of. So if somebody were to already have these anxiety disorders or mood disorders, like depression, it might be difficult for them to be able to actually cope with little amount of stress, that might make the PTSD continue for a while. So imagine a woman that already has mood issues like depression, and then a child of maybe 27 years old or 30 years old is now leaving home. Do you understand how stressful it would be for her compared to a woman who does not have mood disorders? She's probably even happy that, even leave the house, I beg, let me have time with my husband, that kind of thing. So previous history of trauma, if somebody has been raped in the past or has been molested or sexually harassed as a child or an adolescent, or even as an adult, it might make them vulnerable to more stressful events that they might encounter later on in life. Then being of the female gender, like I mentioned before, studies have been done and shown that the female gender are more at risk of developing PTSD. So having lower intelligence, also low IQ, or having somebody who had developmental issues while growing up and now has intellectual disability or learning issues might be at risk of PTSD compared to someone who doesn't. Then personality disorders too, the cluster B personality disorders, they include people that have disorders such as borderline personality disorder. They tend to be on the verge all the time of different emotions. So for example, that can predispose somebody to PTSD. Then lack of social support, you don't have people that are rooting for you and all that. It will make it harder or difficult for you to be able to cope with PTSD, or even can push you into PTSD. So psychological factors like the cognitive theory that I already explained earlier, then the maintaining factors that I said earlier too. So we need to go now to the management of this illness, because actually in psychiatry, it is a mental illness, and there are different ways by which we manage mental illnesses. You will be surprised at the amount of mental illnesses that we have in the world that even me, prior to now, I never knew about, So the modalities of treatment can include psychotherapy, and it can include drug therapy. So what does psychotherapy mean? It means that we're trying to appeal to your psychological, to the psychological aspect of the human, to be able to help them to actually go through these experiences that have happened in the past, help them to go through the adaptive phases. If we have the maladaptive defense mechanism, then we want to help them to deal with it by doing what? By talking and helping them to appeal to their psychological aspect of their life. So what we do is a trauma-focused behavioral therapy. It is usually offered to an individual who is experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder between the first month and the 3rd month. This is for severe post-traumatic symptoms, like anxiety, depression, mood instability, and so on. So we usually offer about 8 to 12 sessions, and most times we work hand in hand with the psychologists, because there's no a lot, like 80% of mental illnesses actually require psychological intervention, and this is usually done by the psychiatrists and majorly the psychologists. Okay, so we work hand in hand all the time, and not just psychologists, people that are also trained in that aspect may be able to help. So we do what we call exposure therapy. That means we try the person to help the person to relieve the symptoms all over again, but in a way that we are also helping the person, we're supporting the person as they are reliving the experiences, are giving you support and helping you with some coping mechanisms that will help you, looking at the event and how we can help you to cope with it. Cognitive behavioral therapy is a very broad aspect of psychology that, would help you with the classical conditioning of fear and all those symptoms that you experience when you're having the post-traumatic stress disorder. Then stress management, so they teach you how to manage your stress in different ways. They are trained, the psychologists are trained in this aspect a lot to be able to help. We don't usually do non-trauma focused therapy, like maybe relaxation techniques for patients who are in the 1st to 3rd month of this post-traumatic stress disorder, because it's not usually that useful, and then it's not really addressing the trauma by itself, so it's not really advisable. Then if symptoms are more than 3 months, we usually do what we call the trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, or we go for the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing method. This is a specialized kind of psychotherapy where you help the patient to actually help them, even while relieving those occurrences or those stressors. You help them to sort of break it down in a way that they're able to understand why this happened, and they're able to process it better. And this usually includes about 12 sessions. So in medicine or in psychiatry, when we have patients that have PTSD, and then we've tried the psychological aspects of the treatment intensely, for up to 12 sessions. We've tried the trauma-focused one, 8 to 12 sessions. Then we've tried the eye movement one, and it doesn't work. What do we do? The next thing is that we go for drug therapy. There are medications, an array of medications that we can use, or that we doctors use in psychiatry, to help patients actually cope better, and they actually work. So if there are other symptoms like depression, we give antidepressants. If there's issue with sleep, we give sleep medications or help with sleep therapy, or refer to the sleep clinic. If there's issue with anti-anxiety, we give appropriate medications. But of course, this person must have seen a doctor, and a psychiatrist is managing the person. And alongside this treatment, we also had the psychological treatment to it, because usually when they are combined together, they tend to work better. They tend to work better actually than doing each one alone. So, but if the drug is not indicated, if the person is getting better with cognitive behavioral therapy, then why go for medications that the person would have to use for a long time? Do you understand? So basically, that's what I have for us today as regards post-traumatic stress disorders. And I'm grateful for you guys listening. And I'm sure, and I hope that you were able to pick 1 or 2 things that would benefit you, or that would even benefit, other people around you when you see these kind of symptoms, and how you might be able to help them by referring them to the appropriate institution that might be able to help them. And then this, the people that invited us today, they are doing a lot. If you see anybody with they are mental advocates, of course. So if you see anybody that have mental problems or they're having symptoms that might suggest that they are not psychologically, balanced, because your mind does a lot for you. So you cannot afford for your mind to be in disarray, so to speak. So you can always contact them. I'm sure that they are always there to help. And if you have any questions as regards, what I've presented today, you can ask questions. I'll be able to take a few questions. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pelumi, for that insightful and enlightening presentation. Thank you so much. So if you have questions, you can just either drop them in the chat box or raise your hand. So I'm sure we have questions common. This was a very educative session. If you have questions about any mental health, about what Dr. Pelumi just shared, rather, please go ahead and ask your questions. Dr. Pelumi, you're still with us, right? I have just one. So a participant shared something with me. I'd just like to share here. Are you with me, Dr. Pelumi?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so he said that I'm just getting back to his message, please. So he said that he used to be very jovial, he used to be a happy person. Then he started getting into relationships and he got his heart broken. So in other words, they served him breakfast. So he got his heart broken and he found it hard to actually heal from that. So he doesn't know how to go on from that kind of experience. He doesn't know how to trust. As in when he gets close to somebody, he has that kind of, can that even be classified as PTSD? He has that one kind of fear, what kind of what he had experienced before. So he just because of that experience, he shies away from having close relationship with anybody.
Okay. Thank you for your question. Well, this question that you asked, I once asked it to when I was still new in psychiatry, maybe failing an exam, having a fail in your relationship. Can it be described as a post-traumatic stress disorder? To an extent, because of the should I say the weight of post-traumatic, the weight that these stressors actually take, that makes us call them post-traumatic stress disorder. So we can't say it is a post-traumatic stress disorder, but we can have symptoms that people with PTSD have in other illness or psychological issues. So I'm sure that it would actually benefit from some of these psychological interventions that we give people with PTSD. So what he might have gone through at that period where, he had a break in his relationship must have been an adverse stressful reaction that would have probably lasted for 2 weeks. And then after that, he has probably been able to cope with it, learning from his experience, and then believing that event might actually maybe break his heart or hurt him, but it won't be he never processed it or anything like that. So we can't really post-traumatic stress disorder, but the management can also be similar to what we have in PTSD.
Okay. All right, so we have another question here. Please, guys, you can drop your questions in the chat box, or you raise your hand, so we just unmute your mic for you to ask your questions. Oh, okay, somebody is asking whether we can have the presentation in soft copy. Can we have your presentation in soft copy?
Sure. Sure, you can.
Okay. All right. So Damilola, you have a question for us, or rather for Dr. Pelumi.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can go ahead to unmute your ears. Please go ahead with your question.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pelumi. So my own question is, symptoms you listed, that some people, they have general low interest in life and they also don't feel like nothing good can come out of their life anymore. Now, in a case where you have let's say, a family member who is experiencing this, but the person has refused to seek help. The person doesn't want to go to therapy, doesn't want to say therapist at all. What can you do to help that family member? Because all the solutions you listed are basically like medical. So you now, as someone who is aware of what the person is going through, and this person understands that, yes, I'm really facing this, but doesn't want to seek and seek help, because I mean the normal Nigeria mindset is, oh, I can't sit down and do therapy, or please ask some white men shit and those kind of things. What can you do to really help this person?
Okay, so the symptoms that this person is experiencing might actually, in the long run, lead to mood disorders like depression and all that. So the first step in the management or helping this individual is actually for the person to realize that they need help. If they don't realize that they need help, then even if you force them or you try to cajole them to go for psychotherapy or to even take medications if need be, it might actually fail, because even when they go for the CBT, they are actually not focusing on how they can really help themselves. So if they don't see why they should do this, then it might just be a waste of energy and a waste of time. So eventually what you have to do is to keep helping the person to see the need for that, so that it doesn't become a full-blown psychiatric illness or a mental illness that, you know, will be out of hand, and then the person will be able to do anything about it.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Pelumi. So we have another question. So here is, what are the practical ways you can help someone going through PTSD?
Okay, so as individuals, and I think that this also relates with the last question that I just answered. So as somebody who is around somebody that you think might be going through PTSD, you can lend a hand. You can even, you know, read about how to cope with it, and then you apply it for the person, because honestly, it's not everybody that will seek help. So you might be able to counsel the person depending on your relationship with the person, or how you are able to effect change. So you can help the person, and if you get to a stage where you feel that, you can no longer continue, then you can seek help in a psychological institution, or a psychiatric hospital, or a mental health institution.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Dr. Pelumi. So for those who want the soft copy of the presentation, please fill the feedback form. The link has been posted in the chat box. Please do fill the feedback form. So we have another question. Somebody wants to know the effects of PTSD and childbirth. Like, is there any relation with PTSD and childbirth?
Okay, so according to the ranking of stressors, childbirth is a stressful condition, but it is more of a tolerable stress, because a lot of people go through childbirth and you know, they come out okay eventually. Some people come down with some mental illnesses after, but it is not like it's not very common. So when you have somebody who had a traumatic life experience, like maybe having stillbirth, or it is a seriously traumatic experience. So when they go through PTSD, we go in line with the same management that I have outlined, and be able to help the person. But if there are other mental illnesses, because like I said, PTSD coexists with other mental illnesses, that if those ones are not taken care of, then the person might not be able to even benefit from the psychological intervention. Do you understand? So that's just how you go about that.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm just stating again, if you want the recording of this session, as well as the soft copy of Dr. Pelumi's presentation, please do fill the feedback form. Our team is posting the link. Please take time out, less than 5 minutes, to fill the feedback form. So one last question, or two actually. Damilola, do you still have a question for Dr. Pelumi, because your hand is still raised? Okay, so somebody asked here in the chat room that she has or he has arthritis, and he's a creator, but because of the arthritis, he has not been able to work on the sewing machine. So I'm just reading out the question for you. So can that be classified as PTSD? I personally think it's just a medical illness, but you're the expert. Can that be classified as PTSD?
No, it cannot, because this arthritis is a medical condition which treatment and management can be managed. It's not all the time can completely treat arthritis. It's a manageable illness. So if the person is able to manage the illness, then it might not be as stressful as a condition that would predispose one to have continued and delayed response to a stressful condition.
Okay. All right, thank you. So please, can we help unmute Damilola? She still has a question. We'll be going into our breakout room in less than 5 minutes. So Damilola, okay, great. You can go ahead to ask the question.
Okay, thank you. I'm so sorry.
There's no problem. Please go ahead.
So in a case where somebody has already received treatment, okay, so take for example suicide, the person was suicidal and then has done treatment therapy alongside drug, and then after a period of time, that let's say a year, and then this whole thing is reoccurring back, is this person supposed to still go over treatment, or is it, I don't know, but is it like possible that somebody actually goes back to that stage even after treating? Just like, I don't know, is it like possible that I've treated this thing before, fully treated, and then it's recurring like after a short period of time again? Or it's just my mind?
It's not just your mind. Okay, so it can, so in psychiatry, we have what we call recurrences, relapses. You know, any mental illness has the possibility of actually recurring, even with proper treatment, you know, and management. So if this happens again, usually some of our patients have to be on medications for like 1 year, 2 years, and then some of them will try to reduce their medications or even at times stop it when we see that, depending on what the guideline says, you know, but some people tend to still have reoccurrence or even relapse. You know, that's after a while that they've gone back to functioning after the treatment, they are okay, they are doing fine. And then all of a sudden, because it is your brain that is in charge of all these things, your mind. So it can happen again, because once a part of the brain has been breached, sometimes even after healing, it can go back to the way it was before. So yes, you are correct. The person will have to go through therapy, the series of therapy, and may have to have it for a longer time. Or even sometimes, some mental illnesses, people have to be on treatment for life. So it's just like a non-communicable disease like hypertension or diabetes and all that. The person has to be on medications for a long time, you know, chronic, it's a chronic thing. So yeah, it can occur like that. And it does occur like that in psychiatry too, in mental illnesses.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Pelumi. So we'll be having our breakout session. Just a quick explanation of what the breakout session is. So it's like having like small meeting rooms, and you have leaders. For this session, we have power room, love room, peace and joy. And the leaders are Mary for power, Ayola for love, Kemi for peace room, Oyeka for joy room. So the breakout room is just where you can network,